Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed Khan. First, just a brief overview of the top stories that are making headlines in Pakistan today. First of all, the Prime Minister has made a very strong statement saying that the days of depending on the United States for military aid are over and Pakistan does not need any support from the United States, which is financial in any nature. A very interesting statement made by the Prime Minister. Then we will also talk about the peace process that Pakistan is trying to revive, and the Foreign Minister Khaja Asif has also said that efforts are being made to restart the peace process to bring peace to Afghanistan. And then we have a joint operation against the Haqqanis, which was also an offer made by the Foreign Minister. Apart from that, we'll also talk about some braid chopping incidents that are taking place in Indian-held Kashmir, a new tactic to scare individuals, people living in Kashmir, and that is by chopping off women's hair in public. That's a new thing, a new strategy that the oppressive forces in India are using to brutalize the people of the Held Valley. And finally, we will talk about the FATA reforms that have been long coming. A lot of people have been interested in seeing those reforms finally take place, and there was a huge rally also that was taken out in Islamabad by the people of FATA to speed up those reforms that are going to make FATA a part of KP. So let's get the conversation started. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today, we have Air Commodore Ghulam Mujadid Saab, and along with him, we have Qamar Cheema. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. So let's start with the attempts of Pakistan to restart the Afghan peace process. Very, very important for Pakistan and Afghanistan and, of course, the wider region as well, sir. In your opinion, sir, this quadrilateral peace process that included the Americans, the Chinese, the Afghans and the Pakistanis has been beset with problems from the beginning. But do you think that there is any chance of that being put behind and a new course being charted so that these talks can actually have some results and be fruitful?
Yes, I am optimistic about the quadrilateral coordination group or cooperative group and its future. It started in January 2016, and within a year or so, I think the first 4 meetings was there was a lot of progress. If we have to look at the political recourse, I think this can prove to be a very good mechanism. However, then in the 5th meeting, which was to take place or which took place in Murray in May 2016, there have been problems. That there was a disclosure by the Taliban
the
Afghanistan officials,
the Afghan government,
Afghan government officials in Kabul, that Mullah Umar, the Taliban leader, actually died in Karachi in 2013. And that was quite upsetting because
a huge setback to the process.
Setback to the process that was also then compounded by the death in the drone strike by the new
Mullah
Akhtar Mansoor or Mansoor Akhtar, and then that complicated the whole process. The Taliban, they got dismayed and disillusioned, and they then started to increase their tempo of attack within Afghanistan, and that had derailed the process all of a sudden. If you want to give peace a chance, then the peace process, despite many local distractions, must be continued by all the involved parties. If you try to prove something within that which is military in nature, then the very concept of peace process gets
it just dies.
Now, I think this is very heartening that our foreign minister has given hint that there is going to be on 16th of this month in Muscat, Oman.
Yes, sir.
There is a chance of the round of the quadrilateral cooperative group, and if it takes place, no matter at what level, I think this will be a step forward to peace.
Cheema Saab, previously as well, efforts were made to bring the Afghan Taliban to the negotiating table, but there were sticking points. The Afghan Taliban wanted to be given the kind of status that they were giving to the Afghan government. So there were some issues due to which the Afghan Taliban were reluctant to join this peace process. But even then, despite that, Pakistan was able to convince them to join the process. But again, as Mujadid Saab has clearly told us about how the whole process was derailed, this time around, What are your expectations? Do you think the Americans really want peace in Afghanistan?
Well, I think there is a huge air of uncertainty in Afghanistan, and the American role is definitely not very much clear in Afghanistan since January till this October is going on. It has been 10 months and we don't have any concrete blueprint of the American policy for the region. And the State Department and the Defense Department are still working what we have to make from Afghanistan. As far as this peace process is concerned, I'm concerned what is the mindset of the government in Kabul. That is most important stakeholder in the process. Is the government in Kabul is interested enough to have another stakeholder into the power sharing formula? That is where that is to be discussed. That is where everyone is going to talk how we have to incorporate. This is we have to discuss that how we have to mainstream, for example, the militants or the Taliban, you name in them anything. So how you have to mainstream them and what they want to do in that. You have to go for the UN resolutions against them. You need to withdraw those resolutions the way they have done for the Hizb Islami and Hikmat-Yar. So the mindset in Kabul is very interesting, and that mindset is confused definitely. And that mindset is not clear in a way because the mindset actually believes that they are not capable enough to hold the Afghan territory in totality. So if they have Taliban inside, then they will have to share power with them. Or if they don't have them into the power, then they have to fight with them, and they are not capable of that. And the Americans are not even capable of that, and they don't have sufficient forces. Even with this new forces coming in Afghanistan, they believe that we may fight with the Taliban. And I think that will further inch away all the parties if the Americans fight with the Taliban on ground, and at the same time there is a quadrilateral peace agreement, peace process going on. So there is a huge confusion that is going on, and I personally believe I'm optimistic, but as far as Afghanistan things go, I'm really pessimistic. I don't see that the Afghan government is transparent in making deals the way they expose Mullah Umar, the way they went for Mullah Mansour.
But President Ashraf Ghani recently just said, in fact, quoted the Hizb Islami case as a case in point, and saying that if we can make peace with the Hizb Islami and have them a part of the government, then why not the Taliban? In fact, he is very keen on having the Taliban on the table. So
I think he's playing to the gallery to show to the government in Washington, because they're the new ones. They want to show that we are here, we want peace, and we want things to be stable. But in my personal understanding, I don't think so. They want it because they want that if they're not capable to maintain, the stakeholder or the only place, the country that could be made scapegoat is Pakistan. And this is what Prime Minister Abbasi mentioned in UN General Assembly, that don't make us scapegoat and don't fight your wars in our country. So I need to look at the capability of the country in actually maintaining the dialogue, sustaining the dialogue, and actually implementing whatever the choices and the decisions come out of that. So this is where you have to be very clear, and I don't see it, that the parties there are capable enough. I personally don't see. If Pakistan have certain issues, sometimes Taliban do not come on table, and we bring them on table because they actually demand an equal status to the Afghan government, although all the parties have agreed for that. But the Taliban have certain, there is certain area of uncertainty with Pakistan as well. They believe that sometimes we are not clear, or we don't want things the way actually they want to view the things. And as far as Mullah Mansour's case was concerned, definitely things were very edgy, and they were not good for us. So I think what I believe is that the Americans need to press the government in Kabul, and we have been talking here.
Or is it the other way around, maybe? Well, anyway, move on. Let's move on, and let's talk about the fact that this particular quadrilateral group has not been in the limelight much. None of the four parties that are involved in the quadrilateral group have been very proactive or seem very keen on returning to the negotiations. Only Pakistan is the one that seems to be pushing the other three countries forward and trying to make this thing happen. What are your views on that, sir?
I think, whenever there is a conflict situation, there are conflict parties. And you get on to the negotiations when you think that all parties are becoming equally vulnerable to the consequences of the conflict. Well, Afghanistan government may lack capacity, may lack governance over its territory. But then there are huge problems with the national security of Pakistan as well. Therefore, it is, I think we have discussed many times over, and all our leaders have said that Pakistan's security is somehow linked with the stability in Afghanistan. And I think to some extent vice versa. Afghanistan's stability also is linked with the stability because we are neighbors. Anything that, happening either side affects automatically because we are joined together, right? Okay, America might have different aspects, geostrategic compulsions because of its location and all that. China might have, but we are, to this thing. I think political settlement. First, we have to decide that what is going to be the mode of settling the conflict. Is it the military or militancy that is going to be the mode of settlement of the conflict, and is it in favor of Pakistan, or Afghanistan has to think it is in favor of Afghanistan, so is America who has to think, well, is the military option that can get its solution or something? Once everybody agrees that ultimately and sooner than later, I think it has to be a political negotiation. And for what? For overcoming all those hurdles that Cheema just pointed out, right. So that we find a way to peace. Well, apparently it looks that there are many hurdles in the process of peace, but then that is the challenge to all the four parties in the quadrilateral, that they have to first start at some point, maybe at a lower level, and then ultimately pick up the momentum. And this is for themselves. Each and every state of the quadrilateral would need peace and stability in the region to its own respective favor.
And when we talk about the American point of view, sir, one of the U.S. Defense Department's State Department's spokesperson, Heather Nauert, has expressed her doubts about this entire quadrilateral process. In fact, she's even pointed a finger at those representatives of the Afghan Taliban that are based in Qatar, saying that what are they doing there, since their being there has not led to any peace efforts whatsoever. So how would you take her criticism on this entire effort? In fact, do you think that another inkling or another sign coming from the United States of their true intentions, that they do not want to have any kind of peace in the region?
I think this is, we have been talking that, so it has been 10 months and nobody even visited Pakistan to talk on this, and just Secretary Mattis visited Kabul to talk that what we want with you and what we have to have with you. Don't underestimate this this behavior of the United States. It is not among the priority. What we call it, that there is more of a Bushism and Trumpism, because the way Bush declined and ignored Afghanistan and he looked at towards Iraq. Same is the case. The President Trump is more interested to talk about Rocket Man on North Korea rather than on what they're actually doing in Afghanistan, where they have thousands of soldiers. So the inclination is not. And if as you're saying, and I think the interesting thing is that if Taliban are in Qatar and that they are there, in another way, the Americans are giving legitimacy to the Qatari government as well. That is also against the Saudis and GCC, because they are staying there, and you are having a partner, you are having your rival there, and you want talks with them, and you are asking your GCC's most aggressive rival at the moment to give them space. And I think there is a confusion there in Washington, and that confusion is not there because the State Department is yet to come up with the concrete. State Department is to give a concrete blueprint to the American president's foreign policy. He has not. The State Department has not come up. There is no place, and there have been internal dissent cables that are going from State Department to the from the officials of the State Department to the Secretary Tillerson and all that. So the confusion that is needed, but I think Pakistan need to keep discussing and talking with the Afghans, because for us Afghans are very important, because there are neighbors and adjacent neighbors. Things are not going to be fine because Pakistan has actually thought that we are not clear about the Afghans at the moment. And similarly, that is the case because Abdullah has not visited Pakistan since he has taken office. So it means the half of the government in Afghanistan is not in the loop with us. That is also serious to note. And when Janab Bajwa visited, he was in India having talks there. So we should not look at from a jaundiced perspective, but at least there is some signal. If the Pakistan Army Chief is going there and he knows he is coming, so at least it was a one-day visit and he knew that things are happening. But I think we need to keep in loop to the Afghans at all level. We need to keep them loop because we don't have a choice. We definitely cannot change the neighbors, and we actually need.
So increasing engagement with Afghanistan is what you would suggest, and that is also one of the things
and
that
the
has
border
been spoken
management,
about.
I think the Pakistanis are asking the Afghans that we can build the border post and check post on your side of the border.
We've also offered them training, by the way.
But I think, sir, the point is that we have some more than 1,400 checkposts on our side, and there are some around 140 checkposts on their side. And we are asking them, we can build you checkpost, and we should do this service and favor to the people of Afghanistan, and they don't agree on this. And then they say that we don't recognize the border, and this is from where they start from scratch. So I think the Afghans are very tough negotiators because they know that, like the Pakistanis, they don't have the luxury of time because they actually want to bring things in order, and we have luxury of time because we don't have stakes in Afghanistan, because the ruling elite is very much, I think Ashraf Ghani just started using Amazigh Pashtun tribe, his tribe name, when he landed in Afghanistan. Before that, he was just Ashraf Ghani working in World Bank, and not just an Afghan, and so they're just trying to play with them, and they're playing with us. But I think we need to tell to the world, because we are a reliable partner, and the world need to know us that we are a reliable partner. So we need to keep an engagement with them, and that's the only way. But I think dealing with Afghanistan is the most tough job for the Pakistan civil military leadership.
Well, there's one of the things that Cheema Saab has also raised, and the foreign minister also mentioned, sir, is that about the waning influence of Pakistan on the Afghan Taliban, and an admission by the foreign minister. And in fact, he went so far as to say that he thinks that maybe even Russia has more influence on the Afghan Taliban than Pakistan does. So how would you take the statement, sir? And then if that's the case, what's the point of this quadrilateral group? And that too when it's mid-level officials who are meeting to move the process forward, not any senior officials that can lend some credibility or seriousness to the effort.
I think since very beginning, as student of international politics, have failed to gauge Pakistan's influence over Taliban. I really did not understand what does it mean. In what way does Pakistan influence Taliban? And how have we taken on, as guardians of the Taliban? I think if Talibans are an independent political entity, whatever they have their own designs, and their power, their ambitions, they flow from Afghanistan, not from Pakistan to elsewhere. So I think while there was this government, the Islamic Emirates in Afghanistan, the way they treated our advices and our suggestions to amend their foreign policy or internal policy options, and the way they
reacted. In fact, they gave us a shut-up call, pure and simple.
Not once, many a times. And this is, once there is a country and it is ruled by anybody, so that's an independent sovereign country. It has a nature, an essence of its own. So even now, if they have their own steps to be taken within Afghanistan, so they will follow that and not somebody's advice.
Right.
So I don't think if Pakistan has very plausible influence over the behavior of Taliban, and we should not claim to have one actually, and I don't think we have much.
All right. So Cheema Saab, just last question on this topic. What are your hopes for the future?
Well, I think we should always hope for the best, because there's no other way. We can't be pessimistic much, because we have very strong stakes in Afghanistan. And that is where the parties in Afghanistan try to take leverage of our seriousness, and they make very uneasy comments and uneasy behavior towards our approach.
Well, while we're still on the topic of Afghanistan, sir, I'd also like to bring in the Prime Minister's statement when he was giving an interview to an Arab newspaper, saying that Pakistan is no longer dependent on America's military assistance and so on and so forth. What do you think is the backdrop of these statements, especially when we look at it from the point of view of the statement that came from James Mattis regarding CPEC and the route passing through disputed territory and allusions made to that effect? What do you think is happening, sir, in that context?
I think the statement of American Secretary on the fact that CPEC routes through the disputed territory is very unfortunate, to say the least. We looked at the United States of America as a manager of the international politics and, to bring about stability in the disputed regions of the world. this statement is actually working in just the opposite direction. And you do not expect from the managers of the so-called managers of the international system or the bigwigs in the international system to say this. If it is to please India, and to put pressure on Pakistan, I think these are two things that United States of America must never choose to exercise, not against Pakistan.
But they've already chosen that, sir.
If they have, then, well, there is always a realization. Actually, international relations are also a game of hit and trial. If something succeeds, you immediately come to know. And if you make a choice that is detrimental, immediately you come to know. So if they feel that way, sooner than later, I'm sure that they would realize that this is a very wrong option. CPEC and its route is passing through Pakistan.
But they've gone further, sir. It's not just the route passing through Pakistan that is problematic. They've made a comment on the entire OBOR saying that there are many belts and many roads rather than one belt, one road. We do not want to follow China's diktat in this particular case. So that's a very blatant statement.
Actually, nobody is asking United States of America to become participants in OBOR or CPEC or something. Well, let's remember that China is an emerging superpower, a competitor, the one who has challenged the status quo. It's a rising power, and it is rising or is becoming a competitor vis-a-vis the already existing power, and that is United States of America. So any move in economics, politics, or strategic affairs that is made by China is inherent by definition is working against the status of the United States of America. So same is the case with OBOR and CPEC.
And did you also hear the statements made by Mr. Hamid Karzai regarding the support to the IS and saying categorically, in fact, that the Americans, in fact, he held the Americans squarely responsible for the creation of the IS, saying that Israel and America have created IS. He didn't mince words when he said that, Cheema Saab.
Well, I think these are very definitely uncomfortable remarks by Karzai for United States.
And this is a president of Afghanistan who has been very highly hawkish and anti-Pakistan throughout his tenure.
But I think since in his last tenure, in his tenure as president in Afghanistan, he was turning away from the Americans.
Do you think his comments are even relevant today? His relevance in the political arena, do you
his
think
comments
has
are relevant. He has ruled actually Afghanistan for 2 terms, and he actually has an influence there. Even I think Ashraf Ghani has got a huge influence from him as well. And he has worked with Hamid Karzai, and much of the Hamid Karzai support has gone to Ashraf Ghani, so he has a huge influence, and I think this is where Hamid Karzai spoke on this issue. The Americans are definitely not happy, and I think, but I think they will definitely call it a conspiracy theory, because one thing is very clear: the world has realized that the mess the Americans created in Iraq that actually gave birth to the IS in Iraq, and then Syria, and then whole of the region is facing the fire. So if this is going on in Pakistan, and that is where we here in Pakistan, we need to be very much concerned that the way we are fighting IS, I think everybody knows that how we have dealt and tackled certain elements which were brewing in Pakistan. We actually managed all those in Balochistan, in Fatah, and in certain places we have been looking at. But I think we need to be very clear on this, and we need to take this a point from the Americans on this, that what is this situation. Pakistan must ask the Americans on this.
Well, like you said before, let's hope for the best, but let's move on to something much more important and closer to home, and that is the merger of Fatah with the KP, and that has been on the cards for quite some time. There have been a number of parliamentary meetings held for that purpose, but again, the people of Fatah were protesting in Islamabad, saying that why is it so slow? What is the problem in doing something which has already been agreed to do in principle? Sir, what is your comment on this particular situation?
Yes, there was some kind of a sit-in yesterday or something of many political parties that were demanding that all that has been agreed and approved by the cabinet must be put into
practice.
practice
Because we keep talking about the fact that implementation has been the weak point for Pakistan in every aspect and respect.
Yes.
So here again we are sitting on the implementation.
That's right. But I think our Prime Minister called them over yesterday evening or something and tried to negotiate with them and try to convince them that they actually the government was very sincere and they were very determined to implement whatever the reform package that had been approved for FATA. And I see no reason. And I think within next couple of days, I think the government is going to make an announcement, agreeing to all the recommendations of that committee that have been actually formally approved also by the cabinet.
Sir, we've just been joined by Nizamuddin Salarzai from FATA. He's a parliamentarian. Let's talk to him and get it from the horse's mouth, as they say, what exactly is the problem at the moment. Thank you very much, Nizamuddin, for joining us on PTV World. Sir, can you please tell us the objective of the protest that was held in Islamabad yesterday, and how far have you managed to get your demands accepted by the government?
Thank you very much for giving us time on PTV World. A slight correction, if I may. I'm not a parliamentarian, I'm just an ordinary political worker. But I was present on stage yesterday during the protest, and we've seen whatever was happening over there. The thing is, the government has approved a report. It has compiled a report on the FATA reforms, which was the committee was led by Sartaj Zisa. That report is a clear-cut indicator of what the people of FATA want. Now the changes are being made to that report. The report was made by a set of ministers belonging to the government itself. It was then the bill that was to be formed for necessary approval was to be put forward in the cabinet meeting. But then it was pulled out at the last moment, and then there was some protest and it was put back in another cabinet meeting. But the word merger was it was expunged from that report, and instead the word mainstreaming was used. Now it might seem like a small problem, but in the sense of it, it changed the whole thing around. The merger was a clear-cut plan. The committee that visited the agencies, the tribal agencies, they were given a clear mandate, and that mandate was to merge federally administered tribal areas with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now the government had to come up with a plan to do that systematically. And the report said it needed almost 5 years and an economic package for 10 years to complete the whole merger process. In the meanwhile, due to some political conflicts within the government and its allies, the word merger was changed to mainstreaming. Now what is being done is that there is no clear-cut indicators that FATA will be merged with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They are trying to extend the jurisdiction of Islamabad High Court to FATA. And there is no clear indication of whether or not FATA will be given provincial assembly seats in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government before 2018 elections. So the whole thing is very ambiguous. It's very hazy. And these protests, they're happening because the government isn't coming out with a clear-cut plan of whether it intends to merge Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and FATA or not.
So do you have any information regarding the meeting that took between the Prime Minister and one of your leaders' representatives? What came out of that?
3 of the MNAs and 1 senator was called from the protest to the Prime Minister's house for negotiations. After coming back, we got to know that the plans that are already being pursued, the delaying plans, the plans that were to be put in action almost 1.5 years back, that same plan is ongoing. There is still no clear-cut sign of whether or not Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and FATA are going to be merged. There is still no clear-cut indications of whether or not FATA will be getting the committee has in the report it has said that it's going to get 6% of NFC for FATA, but there is no indications of whether or not FATA will be given any share at all in the NFC, and there is still no plans of merger inside. The word mainstreaming is being used, and it's a very ambiguous term. It could either mean it's being left out like it is, and there will be certain changes, legal framework changes made in the existing legal system, like the Rivaj Act that was brought to the Parliament, which was another form of FCR, and there was just a masking of the old thing, and it was basically the same thing with a new name, a draconian law that was being passed by our own government instead of the draconian law that is in place, a colonial remnant that is in place right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Nizamuddin, for sharing your thoughts with us on PTV World. So very interesting points made by Nizamuddin Salarzai from FATA. Another thing that we haven't spoken about is what about the fate of PATA? We've also spoken about FATA, but there is PATA attached to FATA as well. Nobody mentioned anything about that. So we'd like to know what's happening with that. Then, sir, very clearly, Mr. Nizamuddin has stated that it's a lot of lip service again, and we are still stuck as far as the FATA reforms are concerned. After listening to his comments, sir, what would you like to say?
I would just like to reiterate or revisit the concept of requirement of appropriate timelines for doing certain actions. It is clear that the committee's recommendation, FATA Reform Committee's recommendation, 36 of them, all have been accepted and they have been ratified by the Federal Cabinet of Pakistan. Also, the Rivaj Act, it probably will become an act after, putting it to the Parliament or something. Which means to say that there is a comprehensive plan of nothing but integration of FATA with mainland Pakistan. Now, it might be that first action might take 1.5 years, second action 2 years, and so on and so forth. It cannot just be that all of a sudden you change the historic configuration of an area. That probably will not be possible. But a gradual approach, and that is not 20 years or something, maybe 5 years or something.
70 years have already happened, so what's another 20?
But the good thing is, that now we are going to implement whatever has been agreed by all stakeholders in the FATA game. I think we must exercise a little bit of patience and give time to the government to implement whatever has been agreed.
Cheema Sahab, what's your comment on this? Because he also mentioned some changes being made to the report that was being read by Sartaj Aziz, and then proposal being pulled out at the last moment. And then he also spoke about the difference between the terms of merger and mainstreaming. And there is a point there, because mainstreaming is quite a vague term when it comes to a serious issue. For example, the merger of two areas, for example, FATA and PATA. In fact, now it's 3. There's PATA, FATA, and KPK.
Yeah.
So we don't seem to have any clear idea or picture of what's going on.
Well, I think that will be very unfortunate if it is one, it is delayed. Second, if there are certain whatever the outcome of that committee has done, if that is changed and the people or the cabinet is kept out of loop, and I think that will definitely be not be done. But anything, I think this kind of statements and that is coming by these people who are just protecting. I think I was just listening to someone yesterday, and they said that we won't like to be called as people from Laka Ghair. I think this is something very unfortunate. We have really done something bad in our country, and that is that we have kept people out of the loop of this system for 70 years. I think we just cannot do. I think, and I have met people there from the FATA, and they are really very strong and hard, and I think the most young guys who are coming from there are really they want to do, because they know that we have been out of the loop. So I think there is only a political consensus that needs to be made, and that political consensus will only come the parties sit together. And I think it should not be kept in mind that the election, because of the election, they don't need to do any kind of they need to make any kind of changes, because there is a belief that because the opposition parties have been saying that we need to have these people in provincial assembly at least, so that they can raise their voice next time when they are into the setup in 2018, because if they won't be into the provincial assembly, at least they cannot raise their voice. And if they will make them for 2023 or something like that, I think that will be very unfortunate that if it is done. But the way the committees has done work, and I think the military is in very eager enough, and they're pushing that we want it to be done soon, that because they believe they have been occupied and they are still there for quite some time, and they want if it is done in next 2 years so that we can leave this place and hand over to the civilians, because the entire infrastructure, the way roads and the schools and colleges and...
Well, the people of Fatah have suffered immensely when we talk about the internal displacement that they had to undergo due to the operations that were being conducted in that area to clear the area of militants and so forth. So I think we as Pakistanis owe it to the people of Fatah to actually hurry up this process. Wouldn't you agree with that, sir?
I would fully agree, but let's not forget, I mean, you know, Fatah is very big, and to create the civilian infrastructure, civilian administration infrastructure at a place which doesn't have that, and it is not easy.
Where there's a will, there's a way, sir.
There is, no, but we are...
Sir, I would like to bring to this statement by Jamiyat-e-Ulama-e-Islam, SAMI, JUIS Chief Maulana Samiul Haq, saying that some people in Islamabad did not believe Fatah was a part of Pakistan. How can he make a statement like that?
I think these are political statements, and Fatah is a part of Pakistan. We have no the debate is not whether Fatah is part of Pakistan.
No, but he's saying that the reason why this is being delayed is about some people.
And also the present debate or parlance is that whether mainstreaming or merger or whatever, it is integration. It is definitely not disintegration. So what is the form of that integration is the I think this is very, very positive. What is going to be the form, when it is going to occur. So whatever is going to happen is of integrative nature, not disintegrative nature. So whatever has happened, it is has happened. We have made them we had this place made ungoverned areas, as they call it, within a country. And Pakistan is not the only one. But it doesn't mean that this is some trophy to Pakistan. It should not have been there. It should not have been Ilaka Ghair or undeclared or ungoverned area. And we have suffered immensely because of that. So we want to make it a governed part of Pakistan. What is its political administrative form? I am sure the people who are sitting in the government, as indeed the parties who are involved in it, they know about it. It is all about integration of Fatah within mainland Pakistan.
Let's talk about the Rivaj Act and the FCR. According to Mr. Salar, he said it's pretty much more of the same. The FCR just being given another name. What is your reaction to that? Cheema Sahab, what would you like to say?
Well, I think such kind of confusions must not come up with that. Why people are still saying that after the recommendations have come, and this confusion and this air of uncertainty is very much, I think, this
detrimental.
Is not, yes, and I think the people who are believing that we have been into the process, we are being mainstreamed as service, saying that although we are moving towards integration, there's a positive sign. What have happened in past, forget that. But I think still I think there should be, we need to accept the unconditional demand. Whatever they say, we need to accept it. At the disservice we have done to those people in the way, and the damage we have done to those people, and the opportunities the people have not got so far, and the opportunities in Lahore, Karachi, and Peshawar are more than, so they bear the same ID card and they have the same social contract with the state. But unfortunately, I think, and this Rivaj Act and FCR, I think, and this is where the division must not come. And I personally find that the Maulana Samiul Haq statement coming and JUF is saying something else.
Exactly. I was going to ask you, in fact, I was going to ask Mujadid Sahab this question regarding JUIF's Mr. Maulana Fazlur Rahman's statement. He's saying that there are elements trying to do politics on the Fatah issue, but he's the one who has been most reluctant. In fact, his was the only party that did not take part in the protest yesterday. There was practically everybody else present.
Even, yes.
So what would you say about that, sir?
And I think there were some unfortunate remarks also associated with Maulana Sahab, that all those people are agents of America or something. I think this is all
in poor taste and bad taste.
This is in bad taste, and this is not a good omen. And I think they're all political actors, and they are asking for a very legitimate right of theirs. We can debate. A Prime Minister took a very wise step to call their representatives and all that. And there is a trust deficit between the ones who rule in Pakistan and the ones who are ruled. So FATA has been in this situation for a very long time. It will, I think, take a little bit of, I don't doubt the sincerity of the government of Pakistan to integrate FATA and to develop FATA to the extent it is possible.
And let's hope that the aspirations of the people of FATA are fulfilled sooner rather than later. That's what we hope for, and let's keep our fingers crossed. Sir, one last thing before we end the program is the new tactic that the Indian army is now using to scare and humiliate the people of Kashmir, and that is now attacking women in public places and cutting off their hair. That is absurd. But anyway, we have a report from Kashmir, so let's take a look at this report from Kashmir, and then we might have a comment for it.
The state terrorism that India unleashed on unarmed defenseless Kashmiris had adversely affected more than 1 million Kashmiris. Over 1 million Kashmiris stand affected by Indian security forces in terms of massacre, extrajudicial killings, stage encounters and organized dishonoring of women, coupled with arbitrary arrest of tens of thousands with their fate unknown for decades. The current situation in occupied Kashmir has exposed the brutal face of India to the world, as there is no match for Indians' brutality and barbarianism. Since the martyrdom of Burhan Wani last year, the Indian forces have ruthlessly used pellet gun fire across the held Kashmir. Consequently, more than 400 Kashmiris have been fully blinded by the use of pellet guns, and over 1,200 have suffered from pellet injuries, impairing their eyesight to various degrees and even causing permanent loss of vision. The Indian security forces have used more than 1.7 pellet against protesters seeking independence from Indian occupation. After failing to suppress the Kashmiri freedom movement, the occupation forces have orchestrated a new brutal tactic to quell the protests. And increasing incidents of braid chopping involving mostly women have been reported in occupation region in recent days. More than 50 incidents have been reported so far. Most of these incidents were reported in the day or evening time, but in the latest such horrible incident, some Indian-sponsored terrorists sneaked into a house in Gulberg, a posh neighborhood of Srinagar, at night recently and chopped off hair of a 10-year-old girl. Most such acts have been reported from South Kashmir's Kulgam and Anantnag districts. The strike was observed on the call of all parties Hurriyat conference against the new reign of terror unleashed in the region at behest of Indian Army. Anam Shehzad, PTV World News.
Well, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but with these pictures, there are no words that can accompany them. And unfortunately, the humanity at large needs to wake up and see the plight of the Kashmiris and lend them their support. With that hope and on that note, it's goodbye.